If this is your first year teaching, congratulations. If this is your second, third, fourth, hey, you're doing a great job. Hang in there, and you're off to a great start. In this video, I'm going to share with you my 3 tips on what you can do, not only just to survive your first year of teaching, but also to thrive on your first year of teaching. Now, if this is the first time meeting, my name is Gabriel Villa. I'll be teaching in Southern California for a total of 18 years. And my goal for this channel is to provide tips and tricks of the trade to make your teacher life a little bit easier. So with that said, let's go ahead and do that intro and enjoy the video. The first tip is don't take things personally. Woo, that is a tough one. And the reason that is a tough one is because let's think about this. If you're an elementary teacher, you would have maybe 30, 40 kids throughout the year. That's a lot of personalities. And if you're upper level, middle school, high school, I mean, you can have 150, 180 students a year. A lot of personalities, a lot of differences, could be a lot of tension, and unfortunately, a lot of problems. And many of those students that have problems at home will bring them into the classroom and they will direct it at you. And so when I say don't take it personally, easier said than done, because some of those comments, they are tough. I know from my own personal experience, I've had students call me all sorts of names, threaten to fight me. They threw milk in my class or at my class, spat in my class, you name it. The list goes on and on. And if you've been teaching any period of time, I'm sure you have your own war stories. But when it says time to, when all that stuff's going on, to put that aside and not taking things personally, that is tough. But I'm telling you, if you can do that, it's gonna make your life a lot easier. The sad truth is, unless you're in education, you really have no idea this all goes on. And in fact, do me a favor. Go ahead, just put down in the comments anything that has happened to you, anything you would like to share about any of your experiences, just so we see that we're not alone in this struggle. So for me, when stuff like this happens, I just kind of try to do the best I can to remain calm and remind myself,
I'm hardly the problem.
In addition to that, besides reminding myself that I'm not the problem, what I also do is I look at the positive, and trust me, sometimes it's hard to see because you got all this other muck and stuff and you have to go through, but there is positive, and there's positives every day. I mean, just think, how about this, when a student walks into your class that hardly ever smiles, but that day they are smiling because they see you, that's a positive. Or how about that fist bump as a student is leaving, or when a student comes back from vacation, they bring you a small little gift, or how about that one lesson that you designed and that just seemed to go perfectly that day. Those are positives. So when you're going through the struggles and you're having difficulties in the class and students are saying or doing things, don't take it personally. Focus on the positive and remember, it's not you. More often than not, they're bringing stuff in from home or outside into the school and into your classroom. A story I can tell you about where that made me realize this, it was several years ago, and I remember it was one of those days, and I had about 10 detentions. And so I was calling home on these tensions. Every time we have detention, we call home, talk to the parents, and of course I get some calls go through, some don't. But when it's all said and done, I'm done with the process, when I finally make contact with everybody, come to find out that out of those 10 students, and they actually were all guys this time, but 10 young men, 8 of them had no dad at home. And I realized, oh my gosh, 8 of these 10 students that were acting like fools in my class were doing that partly because there's no father at home. So no matter what I was doing in class, how good I was or wasn't, the reality is that garbage that they were experiencing at home came into my classroom. And I just had to deal with it the best way that I could. So once again, step 1, do not take things personally. Step 2 is focus on classroom management. Now, classroom management is a huge topic, and you could break it down in so many different ways. but it is essential to your classroom, is that having that classroom management down. Now, I've created many different videos regarding classroom management, and I'll definitely leave a link below so you can check out some of those videos regarding how I run things in my class. But please, whatever you do, make sure that your first year, that is what you focus on, is classroom management. Of course, you're gonna have to still teach the content and the standards and things of that. But the honest truth is, classroom management is either gonna make it, is it basically gonna make you or break you? I've never heard of a teacher getting fired because they didn't cover a particular content or standard, but I have heard of teachers getting fired because they couldn't control the classroom environment. So that needs to be key in your class. If I had a chance to go back in time and talk to my first year teaching self,
what would you say?
I would tell my former self, man, all that stuff you learn, all that fancy stuff you learn in college, the collaboration groups and having students do these different fun activities, it sounds great. But the first year, I would just put that to the side. I would just focus on the basics. I would focus on classroom management and getting through each period and getting through each day. And then once I finally had the foundation and once I started feeling comfortable about how my class was running, then I would start to introduce those other activities and the collaboration and all that in. But if you try to do that too soon, you don't have the classroom management down, you're going to experience nothing but chaos. What classroom management looks like to each teacher is different. Just know that it's different. Just like there's different learning styles, there's different teaching styles. But once you find out what your style is, that's what you need to work toward. The one thing you got to make sure you do is whatever your style is, make sure you take care of the problems right away. I know how it is. It's the end of the period, end of the school year, end of the semester, and you're just thinking, I just want to make it through today, and you start letting things go. The problem is when you let things go, you're going to find yourself that it only starts building upon itself, and before you know it, you have some major problem going on in your class. I remember reading a book, and in this book, it was done by a mayor, and he was talking about how he ran the city, and he had something called a broken glass policy, a broken window policy. And when something like this, he said he put something in place that anytime there was a broken window in his city, he made sure it got fixed right away. Because what would happen is if you didn't fix that broken window, before you know it, it turns into another broken window. And then it turns into graffiti. Then it turns people breaking into the building. It turns to all these problems start happening because you not take care of the problem right away. So with that principle, apply that to your classroom. And if there's any problem in your classroom, make sure you take care of it right away before that small problem becomes a big problem. My third tip is keep things in perspective and remember teaching is not a sprint, it is a marathon. And if you're serious about making this your career, it's going to be a lifelong marathon. So for the first couple of years, the first year for sure, and the several years after that, be kind to yourself. Do not be so hard on yourself. Teaching is unlike any other profession, and it takes some time to get your footing in. For me, it took me took me 7 years to finally get comfortable being in the classroom. So that means for 7 years, I had to get comfortable being uncomfortable. Now, hopefully for you, it's gonna take a lot less, but for me, it took that long. But the key is, as long as you're getting better each day, each year, then you can do this. When I first started teaching, I remember they showed me this one chart, and this chart definitely changed the way I thought about things. My first year was a rough year. I was struggling. I saw this chart and it did two things for me. One, it made me realize I'm not alone in my struggles. And two, it gave me hope. So I want to share that chart with you. Now, the chart I actually saw was for California, but this chart is almost identical, and this is for New York City. It says New York City teacher attrition rates. So it's basically the percentage of teachers that quit over a certain amount of years. So on the bottom it says years of experience, left-hand side, percentage of teachers remaining. And then we're actually gonna look at that red line. So this is a little bit older, but nonetheless, I'm positive the numbers are pretty much right on still, as well as for being in New York or even in California. So here's, once again, I saw this my first year teaching, and the first thing I realized is, oh my gosh, after the first year of teaching, about 1 out of 5 teachers quit. 1 out of 5. And up to this point, I thought, oh my gosh, I'm alone. What am I doing wrong? How come I can't get this down? Then I realized, oh my gosh, I am not alone. 1 out of 5 teachers found teaching so hard that they actually quit after the first year. And I was like, wow, I am not alone. And then if you keep going, year two, you have about 35% of the teachers that quit by year 2. By year 3, you got about 40% that quit. And then by year 4, a little bit. But then here's the important part. By the time you get to year 5, about half the teachers who started the profession will quit. Now, some people look at this and get kind of depressed, like, oh my gosh, half the people quit before year 5. Is this career for me? But I looked at it differently. I looked at it saying, my first year, it's going to be a struggle. Year 2, 3, 4, my first couple of years are going to be hard. But by the time I get to year 5, look at year 5 is around 50%. And it pretty much plateaus from there. So my hope was this, the hope that this gave me was that if I can make it to year 5, then I could pretty much do this from there on out. And that's exactly what happened. Now for me, once again, it took me to about 7 years for me to kind of plateau out, but the reality is the same. If you can make it to about year 5, the hardest work is behind you. And once you finally get this down, it actually starts to become very enjoyable. And that's where I'm at now. I enjoy and I love teaching. So if you truly want to make this job your career, just know you can do this. The first couple of years are probably going to be tough, but it's tough for everybody. But if you hang in there, get better each day, each week, month, year, before you know it, you're going to really start to enjoy this career. So with that said, just stay in it and you can do this. I hope you found this information helpful. And if you want some other information regarding tips and tricks of the trade, please click on one of the links above here. And remember, together we can make our lemon days into lemonade weeks. Stay zesty.